Hello students, how are you? I hope you all are doing well and good. And in the previous classes, we have studied very detailed about the process of photosynthesis and the role of chlorophyll and the significance of photosynthesis. And I hope that you all have completed your homework. Okay, so today we are going to discuss about the other modes of nutrition in plants. Okay, so first one is the parasitic plants. Okay, parasitic plants. So these are the plants which depends upon the other plants for food and shelter. And if you see here in this picture, the right one, so this is a tomato plant. On this one you can see a small yellowish structure, a thread like yellowish structure, twins around the stem of the tomato plant. So this is we can call this one as the parasitic plant. So the name of the plant is Cuscuta. This is Cuscuta. The common name of the Cuscuta is Amarbel. See, in the previous class I told you that the yellow colored leaf cannot perform photosynthesis because chlorophyll is absent. And if you observe Cuscuta here, Cuscuta is also yellow in color. That means chlorophyll is absent. So if there is no chlorophyll, so no photosynthesis, right? So if there is no photosynthesis, how they will get the food? So they have to depend upon the other plants for food. Okay, and if you see here in this picture, tomato plant, we can call tomato plant as host because it is bearing the parasite. It is inviting the parasite. So that is why it is known as host. And the Cuscuta plant, which is growing on the tomato plant, is known as parasite. See, on human beings also, we can see many parasites are depending on us. Take for example mosquito. Mosquito is also a temporary parasite which lives on human beings, which especially lives on human beings and some other mammals also. See, temporarily they will come to us, they will suck the blood and they will go away. That means they are depending on us for food. Okay, so our mosquito is also a parasite. Okay, next one we'll discuss about the second mode of nutrition is the insectivorous plants. So these are the plants which which feeds on insects for their nutritional requirements. So example for the insectivorous plant is pitcher plant. See, here you can see the picture of the pitcher plant. Okay, this is the pitcher plant. Okay, so you see here, this is a pitcher plant. Here it is a modification of the leaf. Pitcher plant here, this is a modification of the leaf. And if you carefully observe this structure, it is looking like a small tumbler. Okay, and here you can see a lid like structure here. You see, I am drawing on this one. And here on these walls it secretes it also performs photosynthesis. You can see it is green in color. I told you it is a modification of leaf. See, this leaf is green in color and it performs photosynthesis. But why? So as it is performing photosynthesis, it can release some sugars. It releases some sugars on here in this area. So these sugars attracts insects. So insects need sugars. So whenever they will come here for the this one sugars, so they will enter into this tumbler. So this one is a hollow tumbler. So inside this one, so many hair will be there, downwardly projected hair. That means the hair is in this direction. Okay, hair is in this direction. Whenever insect come inside, it will not go back, right? It can allow entry, but it cannot go back. And at the same time, whenever insect enter into this tumbler, this lid like structure closes this one. Okay, so what will happen? Insect get trapped inside this one, inside the pitcher plant. But you may get a doubt why it feeds on insects. Because if you test the soil in which the pitcher plant grows, it lacks nitrogen. Actually, these pitcher plants grow in nitrogen deficient soil. So without nitrogen, they cannot synthesize proteins. So for the nitrogen requirement only, they feeds on insects. Okay, they feeds on insect. And next mode is the saprotrophic nutrition. So here in this one, if you take example fungi, have you ever observed fungi? You can usually see in rainy season, right? You can easily see in rainy season. You can see fungi very commonly in rainy season. And also if you observe this picture, it is growing on dead material. Some dead leaf, dead plants are there. Here it is growing on this one. So these are fungi. We can call fungi as saprotrophs. That means they depend upon the dead and decaying organisms for their nutritional requirements. Okay, so we can call such organisms as saprotrophs. And example for the saprotrophic nutrition is fungi, because they depends upon dead and decay matter. Okay, so next mode is symbiosis. See, if you observe symbiosis, symbiosis involves two organisms. These two organisms depends upon each other for food and shelter. For example, if you take lichens, see this white, you must have seen the plants. This white color structure is known as lichen. So lichens is an association between algae and fungi. I told you in symbiosis always two organisms involved. So in lichens, what are the which are the organisms involving? So algae and fungi. Algae and fungus, your fungus. Okay, they live together. So what fungus will do? So they both depend. I told you that these two organisms depends upon one another, on each other for food and shelter. So in lichens, your fungus provides shelter, water and minerals to algae. In previous class, I told you that algae contains chlorophyll. So if it is having chlorophyll, they can perform photosynthesis. Okay, so that means algae prepare foods and provides to the fungus, and in return fungus provides shelter, water and minerals, because they need water for the process of photosynthesis. Otherwise they cannot perform photosynthesis. And fungus, they cannot prepare their own food. See, here you can see fungus, as fungus is a saprotroph. Fungus, they cannot prepare their own food. So here algae is preparing the food and giving food to the fungus, and fungus is giving shelter and water to the algae. So in this way they both are living in a special association known as symbiosis. Okay, so I want to tell you one interesting thing about these lichens. So scientists use these lichens, use these lichens as an environmental as an indicators for pollution. Okay, suppose if you take any area, here, if suppose if in this area pollution is very high, we cannot see lichens on the plants. That means in Delhi city we can rarely see lichens. But if you see Kerala state, pollution is very less. So so in Kerala we can see very oftenly, we can see such kind of structures on the plants. So this is known as lichens. So we can use lichens as a pollution indicator. Suppose in any area lichens, we can see if lichens are more, that means their pollution is very less. Okay, so remember this one, it is not there in your textbook, but still I am telling. So next one is how nutrients are replenished in the soil. See, I told you plants absorbs minerals from the soils. See, as they consumes more and more nutrients, soil in the soil minerals quantity get decreased. So we need to add, see, in crops also, in crops plants consume more minerals and nutrients from the soil. So once the farmer harvests the crop, the soil becomes poor. That means in soil we can see only the pure quantity, a very less quantity of minerals and nutrients. So in this case, if farmer grow any crop, he will not get the desired yield. So the farmer need to replenish the soil with so many nutrients. So for that one, farmers used fertilizers and manures, and they contain so many minerals known as nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. So so in order to replenish this one, farmers need to add fertilizers and manures to the soil from time to time. And in the previously we discussed about the nitrogen quantity in the soil, and you see the nitrogen gas, the quantity of nitrogen gas in the air is very very high. That means nearly 78%, nearly 78%. But plants cannot take this one, plants cannot utilize this one directly. So there is a special bacteria in the soil known as rhizobium. So rhizobium is a bacteria. So what they do, rhizobium we can commonly see in leguminous plants. That means your dals, pulses, plants which give dals. So in this we can call that plants as leguminous plants. We can commonly see rhizobium bacterium in the roots of leguminous plants, and it is also a kind of symbiotic association. Here you can see, I told you, in symbiotic association two organisms involved. So one is the leguminous plant and next one is the rhizobium bacteria. So they both forms a symbiotic association. So what rhizobium do? Plants need nitrogen, and rhizobium what they can do, they can take the atmospheric nitrogen and converts into an usable form. That means they fix the nitrogen in the soil. So whenever we water the plants, water the so many minerals and also the fixed nitrogen in the soil get dissolved in the water, and this water is taken by the plant with the help of a root. Okay, root. So in this way rhizobium helps the plant to get the nitrogen, and in return what rhizobium is getting from the plant provide food and shelter to the bacteria. See, I told you plant performs photosynthesis and prepare their own food, but rhizobium cannot. Rhizobium can do only one thing, they can only fix the atmospheric nitrogen gas and convert into an usable form. They can only do that one. So this symbiotic association is of very important to the farmer. How? You suppose in any field, if rhizobium bacteria are more, they can fix a large quantity of nitrogen into the soil. That means plants can utilize that one, and it can give best yield, right? And also it reduces the cost of and also it reduces the farmer's cost. How? He no need to use that one, right? He no need to use the fertilizer which is rich in nitrogen. Okay, I hope you all have understood my session, and this is your homework for today. Please note down the homework and submit the same in the Google Classroom. Thank you so much, students. That's all for today. Bye bye now.